Who are you really?
I am the servant of the power behind the nothing.
The image of a boy riding a luckdragon through the clouds became every kid's flying dream in 1984. The NeverEnding Story crashed into theaters on April 6th and proved that German directors could make magical fantasy epics that traumatized children worldwide, while parents debated whether a film about reading books was educational or just really, really sad. Wolfgang Petersen directed his first English-language film, adapting Michael Ende's beloved novel into a visual spectacle that mixed practical puppetry with genuine emotional devastation.
Please! You're letting the sadness of the swamps get to you. You have to try. You have to care.
Barrett Oliver played Bastian, the bullied kid who discovers a magical book and realizes he's reading himself into the story. Noah Hathaway was Atreyu, the young warrior racing to save a dying world. And Tammy Stronach appeared for exactly 10 minutes as the childlike empress who somehow became the film's emotional center. The film cost $27 million, making it the most expensive production outside America and Russia at the time, and earned $100 million worldwide while creating a generation of kids who will never emotionally recover from watching a horse sink into sadness. It spawned 2 sequels, endless merchandise, and decades of therapy bills. But behind every handcrafted creature and magical landscape was chaos, a child actor nearly drowning repeatedly, an author who hated the adaptation so much he sued, animatronics that kept breaking down, and a production so grueling that several cast members still refuse to talk about it. Now, before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe because it really helps the channel grow. Let's start with number 15. Number 15, the author hated the film so much he sued to stop it and lost. Michael Ende, who wrote the original novel, despised Wolfgang Petersen's adaptation with such intensity that he attempted multiple legal actions to prevent the film's release. Ende felt the film betrayed everything his book stood for and wanted his name removed from the production entirely. Ende's primary objection was philosophical. His novel was a meditation on the power of imagination and the dangers of escapism. Petersen's film, in Ende's view, was exactly the kind of empty spectacle his book warned against. The movie emphasized visual effects and adventure.
How can I get there?
You can't. It's 10,000 miles away.
While minimizing the book's deeper themes about creativity and storytelling. Ende demanded script changes during pre-production. When producers refused, he sued to have his name removed from the credits and to stop the film's release. German courts ruled against him, determining that once he'd sold the film rights, he no longer had creative control over adaptations. The legal battle became public and bitter. Ende gave interviews trashing the film before it premiered. He called it a gigantic melodrama of kitsch, commerce, plush, and plastic in German newspapers. The producers countered that Ende's contract gave them full creative freedom. The film was released despite Ende's objections and became a massive commercial success. Ende refused to watch it and spent the rest of his life criticizing the adaptation in interviews. He died in 1995, still bitter about what had been done to his work. Here's the ironic defeat. The film Ende tried to destroy became far more famous than his book. Millions know the movie who've never read the novel. Number 14, Noah Hathaway nearly drowned, 3 times filming the swamp scene. The Swamp of Sadness sequence where Artax sinks into the mud is cinema's most traumatic horse death, and filming it nearly ended with Noah Hathaway actually drowning. The scene required Hathaway to be pulled underwater repeatedly by the mechanical horse rig, and multiple takes went dangerously wrong. The swamp was a massive water tank with a platform that could be lowered to create the sinking effect. Hathaway was attached to the mechanical horse with wires and had to perform the scene while the platform descended, pulling both him and the horse prop underwater. During the first major attempt, Hathaway's foot got caught in the horse rigging as it descended. He was pulled underwater, unable to free himself, while crew members scrambled to reverse the mechanism. By the time they pulled him up, Hathaway had inhaled water and was genuinely choking. This happened 2 more times during the week-long shoot of the sequence. Each time, some element of the rigging caught Hathaway or malfunctioned.
Artax! Stupid horse! You gotta move or you'll die!
pulling him under longer than intended. Production had safety divers standing by, but the incidents were terrifying enough that Hathaway later described the scene as the most dangerous work he'd done as a child actor. Hathaway was 12 years old and required by law to have limited work hours, but the scene's complexity meant those hours were spent in genuine peril. Number 13. The Luckdragon was operated by 16 puppeteers and kept breaking down. Falkor the Luckdragon was the film's most technically complex creation, requiring 16 puppeteers working simultaneously to operate the full-body puppet. The dragon was over 40 feet long, weighed over a ton, and broke down so frequently that production schedules had to be rewritten around mechanical failures. The puppet was built by Peterson's team in Munich using a combination of foam latex, animatronics, and radio controls. The head alone required 4 puppeteers, one for the jaw, one for the eyes, one for ear movements, and one coordinating facial expressions. The body needed additional operators for different sections. During the flying sequences, Falkor was suspended on wires with Noah Hathaway strapped to its back. The weight of the puppet plus Hathaway meant the wire rigging was under enormous strain. Multiple times during filming, the puppet's internal mechanisms would fail mid-take, leaving Hathaway suspended on a broken dragon waiting for repairs. The animatronics controlling Falkor's facial expressions were particularly temperamental.
My name is Falkor.
And my name is...
Atreyu. And you're on a quest.
How'd you know that?
You were unconscious.
The eye mechanisms would stick, the jaw wouldn't close properly, and the ear servos would make grinding noises that ruined audio takes. Each breakdown meant stopping production for hours while technicians made repairs. The production scheduled 2 extra weeks purely for Falkor mechanical failures, and they still ran over because the puppet broke more frequently than anticipated. Here's the technical nightmare. The creature that looks so magical and alive on screen spent more time broken than working. The Luckdragon that symbolizes hope and joy was held together with desperate repairs and puppeteer improvisation. Number 12. Tammy Stronach appeared for 10 minutes and never acted again. Tammy Stronach played the childlike empress, appeared in maybe 10 minutes of screen time total, delivered the film's emotional climax, and then completely disappeared from acting forever. Her brief appearance became iconic, but she walked away from Hollywood immediately after and never looked back. Stronach was 11 years old when cast after an extensive search for the childlike empress. Peterson wanted someone who looked genuinely otherworldly and innocent. Stronach had minimal acting experience, but possessed an ethereal quality that cameras captured perfectly.
Bastian! Please! Save us!
Her scenes were filmed in just a few days. The ivory tower sequences required her to sit still for hours while the crew adjusted lighting and effects around her. She delivered her lines, completed her work, and went home to New York. After the film's release, Stronach received offers for other roles. Studios wanted to capitalize on her performance and distinctive look. She turned everything down. Her parents supported the decision, agreeing that one film was enough. Stronach pursued dance instead, studying choreography and eventually becoming a professional dancer and teacher. She's given occasional interviews about the NeverEnding Story, but has consistently said she has no interest in returning to acting. Number 11. The film was shot entirely in Germany with American actors who couldn't speak German. The NeverEnding Story was a German production, filmed entirely in Bavaria Studios in Munich, but the cast was predominantly American and English-speaking. This created constant communication challenges between the German crew and American actors that slowed production significantly. Director Wolfgang Peterson spoke English well enough to direct the actors, but most of the crew spoke minimal English. Technical directions had to be translated, which meant every setup took longer than it would have with a unified language. Barrett Oliver and Noah Hathaway, both American child actors, couldn't communicate directly with most of the crew. When they had questions or concerns, everything went through Peterson, or the small number of bilingual crew members. This created delays and occasional misunderstandings about blocking and performance. The language barrier was particularly problematic during the complex practical effects sequences. The puppeteers operating creatures needed to coordinate with actors, but language differences meant coordination happened through translators or hand signals rather than direct communication. Peterson later admitted the language challenges added weeks to the production schedule. Simple conversations that should have taken minutes required translation chains that ate up hours. The production had to hire additional bilingual staff just to facilitate communication. Here's the production inefficiency. The film that looks so seamless on screen was created by people who literally couldn't talk to each other directly. The magic required constant translation and patience. Sometimes the biggest production challenges aren't technical or creative, they're just trying to get everyone speaking the same language. The German-American production became a masterclass in non-verbal filmmaking out of pure necessity. Number 10, Noah Hathaway, suffered multiple injuries and still has scars. Noah Hathaway's physical performance as Atreyu came at significant personal cost. He suffered multiple serious injuries during production and carries permanent scars from the role that defined his childhood. The most serious injury happened during a horse riding sequence. Hathaway was thrown from the horse and trampled, suffering internal injuries that required hospitalization. Production shut down for 2 weeks while Hathaway recovered. Doctors told his parents the injury could have been life-threatening. Hathaway also injured his eye during the scene where Atreyu climbs out of the swamp.
Please help me. You said you knew.
You're tired of sneezing. Go away.
A piece of debris from the set struck him near the eye, requiring medical treatment and nearly ending his ability to continue filming. The injury left a small permanent scar. The physical demands of the role were extreme for a 12-year-old. Hathaway performed most of his own stunts, spent hours in water tanks, rode horses at speed, and worked in uncomfortable practical effect setups. His body paid the price. In interviews decades later, Hathaway has said that while he's proud of the film, the physical toll was immense and he carries literal scars from the production. He's shown journalists the marks that remain from various injuries sustained during filming. Here's the childhood sacrifice. The warrior who saves Fantasia was played by a kid who genuinely suffered physical trauma to deliver the performance. The heroism on screen required real pain from the actor. Number 9, multiple horses played Artax, and they kept getting stuck in the swamp. The horse that played Artax wasn't one horse, but multiple horses used throughout production. And during the Swamp of Sadness filming, the horses kept getting genuinely stuck in the swamp materials, creating delays and genuine distress for the animals that made the scene more traumatic to film. The production used at least 3 different horses to play Artax throughout filming. Different horses had different temperaments and training, making some better for certain types of scenes. The swamp sequence required a particularly calm horse that could handle being partially submerged. The swamp materials consisted of water mixed with peat moss, mud, and other organic materials designed to look threatening on camera. The mixture was heavier and stickier than anticipated, and the horses would sink deeper than planned, becoming genuinely stuck and distressed. Animal handlers had to intervene multiple times during filming when horses became stuck and started panicking.
Come on, boy.
The production would halt while crew members extracted the horse and calmed it down. This happened repeatedly throughout the week-long swamp sequence shooting. The genuine distress of the horses made Noah Hathaway's emotional performance even more authentic. He was reacting to real animals in real trouble, not just performing against a calm prop. His tears were partly genuine concern for the horses struggling around him. Here's the unintended authenticity. The scene where Artax gives up and sinks was filmed with real horses genuinely struggling in heavy swamp materials. The animal distress that made the scene heartbreaking was real. Number 8, Wolfgang Petersen collapsed from exhaustion and had to be hospitalized. The grueling 13-month production schedule pushed director Wolfgang Petersen past his physical limits. Midway through filming, Petersen collapsed from exhaustion on set and required hospitalization, forcing production to shut down for several days while he recovered. Petersen was working 16-hour days, managing the massive practical effects production, coordinating between German crew and American actors, dealing with constant mechanical breakdowns, and fighting to stay on schedule and budget. The physical and mental toll was immense. The collapse happened during a particularly demanding week of fall-core flying sequences. Petersen had been working consecutive days without adequate rest, trying to capture complex shots before losing scheduled studio time. He passed out while setting up a shot and was taken to a Munich hospital. Doctors diagnosed severe exhaustion and dehydration. They told Peterson he was risking serious health consequences if he didn't reduce his workload. The production was ordered to implement mandatory rest days and shorter shooting schedules. Peterson returned after a forced 4-day break, but the incident scared everyone involved. The production brought in additional assistant directors to share the workload and implemented stricter limits on Peterson's hours. Here's the director's sacrifice. Peterson literally worked himself into a hospital bed to complete the NeverEnding Story. The film that looks so magical on screen was directed by a man pushing his body beyond safe limits. Number 7. Noah Hathaway trained with horses. For 6 months before filming began, Noah Hathaway underwent intensive horseback riding training for 6 months before production began, working with professional equestrian trainers to achieve the level of riding skill required for Atreyu's extensive horse scenes. The training was more rigorous than most professional riders receive. Hathaway started as a complete novice with no riding experience. Atreyu required not just basic riding, but advanced skills: riding bareback, riding at speed, controlling the horse during emotional scenes, and maintaining performance while handling the physical demands of staying mounted. He trained 5 days a week with Olympic-level equestrian coaches in Los Angeles before production moved to Germany. The training continued in Munich with German riders who taught him European riding techniques.
I know what you want. It's time to eat.
Hathaway spent hundreds of hours in the saddle before cameras rolled. The extensive preparation was necessary because Hathaway performed most of his own riding stunts. Insurance required he demonstrate competency before being allowed to ride without a double. The trainers had to certify he could safely handle the horses in various conditions. By the time filming began, Hathaway was riding at an advanced level. The bond he developed with the horses during training translated to authentic on-screen chemistry. His comfort in the saddle allowed Peterson to shoot longer takes without cutting to stunt doubles. Here's the preparation that paid off. Hathaway's 6 months of intensive riding training created a warrior who genuinely looked at home on horseback. The athleticism wasn't faked, it was earned through months of daily practice. Number 6. The Swamps of Sadness set was built over an actual swimming pool. The iconic Swamps of Sadness, where Artax sinks and Atreyu despairs, was constructed over Bavaria Studios' Olympic-sized swimming pool. The production drained the pool, built platforms inside it, then refilled it with water and added the swamp materials to create the scene. Using the existing pool solved multiple problems. It provided a controlled water environment with proper drainage and plumbing. The pool's depth allowed for the mechanical platforms that created the sinking effects. And the studio's existing water safety infrastructure meant production could meet insurance requirements for water work. The swamp materials floating on top of the pool water were a mixture of peat moss, plant matter, and safe theatrical materials designed to look organic and threatening. The mixture had to float realistically while being safe for the child actor who'd be working in it for weeks. The pool conversion took over a month. Building the mechanical platforms, installing the sinking rigs, and creating the swamp atmosphere required extensive engineering and design work. The production essentially built a functional lake inside a building. After filming was completed, the entire swamp set was dismantled, and the pool was restored to its original state. The most memorable location in the film existed for just a few months before being erased entirely. Here's the practical magic. The swamp that traumatized millions was a swimming pool filled with theatrical materials and mechanical platforms. The sadness was industrial, the danger was controlled, and the whole thing was built to be demolished. Number 5. The film's budget made it the most expensive non-American production ever. The NeverEnding Story's $27 million budget made it the most expensive film ever produced outside the United States and Soviet Union at the time of its creation. The scale of investment was unprecedented for European cinema and represented an enormous financial gamble. German producers Bernd Eichinger and Dieter Geisler secured funding from multiple German investors, but the budget exceeded anything German cinema had attempted before. Most German films in the early 1980s cost under $5 million. The NeverEnding Story was budgeting more than 5 times that amount. The money went primarily into practical effects, creature construction, and the elaborate sets and miniatures. The production employed over 300 people at its peak and required extensive specialized equipment imported from around the world. German investors were nervous throughout production as costs climbed beyond initial estimates. The production went over budget, requiring additional financing midway through filming. The financial pressure on Peterson was immense. The gamble paid off spectacularly. The film's worldwide gross of over $100 million meant it earned back nearly 4 times its production cost, becoming one of the most profitable German films in history. Here's the financial risk that paid off. German producers bet more money on a children's fantasy film than their entire industry had ever spent on a single production. The risk could have bankrupted everyone involved. Instead, it proved that European cinema could compete with Hollywood on spectacle and budget. The financial success opened doors for bigger European productions and established Germany as capable of creating blockbuster-scale films. Number 4. Limel's theme song was written in one day and became bigger than the film. The theme song, NeverEnding Story, performed by Limal, was written and composed in approximately one day by Giorgio Moroder and Keith Forsey, and became such a massive worldwide hit that in many countries it's more famous than the film itself. Moroder, fresh off success with movie soundtracks for Midnight Express and Flashdance, was hired to create the main theme. He and Forsey sat down with the brief to write something anthemic and memorable that captured the film's spirit. They composed the melody and wrote the lyrics in a single intensive session. Limal, former lead singer of Kajagoogoo, recorded his vocals shortly after. The production from composition to final mix took less than a week. The song became an international phenomenon. It hit number 1 in multiple countries, charted higher than most film theme songs before or since, and became a defining sound of 1980s pop music. Radio stations played it constantly, often with listeners not realizing it was from a movie. In several European countries, NeverEnding Story, the song was more culturally significant than The NeverEnding Story, the film. People knew every word of the song who'd never seen the movie. Here's the accidental triumph. The theme song dashed off in a day became more enduring and successful than the film it was written for. The hasty composition outlived the movie's cultural relevance in many markets. Sometimes the best work is created under pressure, with minimal time for overthinking. Moroder and Forsey's one-day composition became an eternal earworm that transcended the film and defined an era of pop music. Number 3. The Auryn Medallion became the most shoplifted movie prop in history. The Auryn Medallion, the golden amulet with 2 intertwined snakes that serves as Fantasia's most powerful artifact.
He who wears the Auryn speaks for the Empress. It will guide and protect you.
Became notorious as the most shoplifted piece of movie merchandise in retail history after the film's release. Stores couldn't keep the replicas in stock because they were being stolen constantly. Warner Brothers licensed the Auryn design for official merchandise, and jewelry stores, toy stores, and department stores stocked replica medallions. Within weeks of the film's release, retailers reported theft rates of 60 to 70% for the Auryn, far exceeding normal shoplifting rates for similar items. The medallion's design made it particularly appealing to steal. It looked valuable, had symbolic meaning to fans, and was small enough to easily conceal. Teenagers especially targeted it, seeing the Auryn as a status symbol representing the film they loved. Retailers tried various anti-theft measures, locking the medallions behind glass cases, requiring store employee assistants to view them, keeping stock in back rooms. Nothing worked effectively. The Auryn was so desirable that people found ways to steal it regardless of security measures. The theft problem became so severe that some retailers stopped carrying the merchandise entirely, hurting Warner Bros.' licensing revenue. The company eventually redesigned the packaging and implemented stricter retailer security requirements. Here's the criminal success. The artifact meant to save Fantasia became the most stolen movie merchandise in retail history. The symbol of hope and protection inspired mass theft. Number 2. The child actors were required to live in Munich for over a year. Barrett Oliver and Noah Hathaway were required to relocate to Munich, Germany for the duration of filming, which stretched over 13 months due to the production's complexity. Both child actors lived in Munich with guardians while attending German schools and learning to function in a foreign culture. American child labor laws required the production to provide education for the young actors, but since filming was in Germany, they attended local international schools in Munich between shooting days. Both actors have described the experience as culturally disorienting. Oliver and Hathaway became close friends during the extended production, essentially living through a shared experience of cultural displacement while filming an emotionally demanding movie. Their real friendship translated to authentic on-screen chemistry, despite their characters rarely interacting. The extended stay in Munich meant both children spent formative months away from their American homes, families, and normal childhood experiences. The production became their entire world for over a year. Parents and guardians accompanied the children, but the experience was still isolating. Both actors were working in a German-speaking environment, attending schools where they didn't speak the language fluently, and performing in demanding roles that required emotional vulnerability. Here's the childhood sacrifice that created magic. The two young leads gave up over a year of normal childhood to live in a foreign country making a movie. The displacement was real, the isolation was real, and the cost of creating fantasy was measured in missed birthdays and cultural dislocation. Number 1. The Artax death scene traumatized millions and almost got cut. The scene where Artax sinks into the swamp of sadness while Atreyu screams helplessly is widely considered one of the most traumatic moments in children's cinema, and Wolfgang Petersen nearly cut it entirely because test audiences found it too devastating for a family film. Early test screenings showed children leaving theaters in tears, parents complaining that the horse death was too intense, and concerns that the scene would damage the film's commercial prospects. Studio executives pressured Petersen to remove or shorten it significantly. Petersen refused. He argued the scene was essential to the film's emotional core, and that sanitizing it would undermine the story's themes about grief and loss. The swamp of sadness represented giving up on life, and Artax's death had to be devastating to work thematically. The battle over the scene continued through post-production. Petersen made minor trims but kept the sequence's emotional intensity intact. The studio reluctantly agreed to keep it against their commercial instincts. The scene became the film's most discussed moment, generating word of mouth that actually helped box office rather than hurt it. Parents warned other parents, children told friends, and the controversy drove ticket sales. Here's the traumatic triumph. The scene executives wanted to cut for being too sad became the film's defining moment and greatest marketing tool. The horse death that seemed commercially risky became the reason people went to see the film. Sometimes the darkest moments are the most powerful. Petersen's refusal to sanitize childhood grief created a scene that traumatized millions, but also taught them that sadness is survivable. The devastation was the point. And there you have it. 15 wild, weird facts about the film that traumatized a generation, while teaching them about imagination, grief, and the power of stories. From Michael Ende hating his own adaptation, to Noah Hathaway nearly drowning 3 times, to horses getting genuinely stuck in the swamp, to Wolfgang Petersen collapsing from exhaustion, to the Auryn becoming the most shoplifted merchandise ever. The NeverEnding Story was controlled chaos disguised as magical fantasy. The film that required child actors to live in Germany for over a year. That was built over a swimming pool, that featured a luckdragon held together by prayers and puppeteers, became one of the most beloved fantasy films ever made. The production where Hathaway trained for 6 months to ride horses, where performers couldn't speak to crew, where the theme song became bigger than the movie itself, created something that transcended its troubled creation. Which fact shocked you most? Drop your answers in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the film that proved childhood trauma could be a family entertainment, smash that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories about the movies that defined our childhoods. Until next time, the story never ends.